Well, hello again, and we hope you're all having a great Wednesday afternoon. Like always, I'm trying to provide good content to everyone who's at home. And what I've been trying to do is speak to other lawyers about how their law firms are handling the COVID shutdown. Obviously, law firms, like every other business, have had to operate in different ways. So today, I'm joined with James Abrenio, and James practices in the Northern Virginia area in the area of criminal defense and personal injury. I've known James for quite some time. And the other individual, Larry Welsh, is from LaMonica Law, and that firm practices in Media, Pennsylvania, but services clients in the 5 counties in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So uh, today, we just want to speak about how our firms are dealing with it. I know that a lot of my clients and listeners and family and friends know how our firm is working through it. And what I've said before is that really it's the law firms that can get through this and really get through it not only without an issue, but kind of grow from it, are the ones who are really going to separate themselves, I believe, not only in 2020, but moving forward into the future. So I think this is a good opportunity to really evaluate law firms and see who is really doing what is necessary to get through this during a tough time. So James, why don't you start it off and just kind of tell everyone what you do, how this has affected your law firm, and and we'll go from there.
So first of all, Alfonso, thank you for putting this together. I love the technology. I've always been following your podcast and a lot of the stuff that you do. I'm a big fan of your criminal defense practice too. So as Al said, I'm a personal injury and criminal defense attorney in Fairfax, Virginia. I service for my personal injury practice. I go all over the state for my criminal defense practice. Because the cases are usually smaller and quicker, I kind of just try to stay in the regional area. I'll travel to places like Charlottesville, where I went to school for undergrad, just because I love it out there. And I'll go down to Richmond because my parents are down there. But that's what I do now. Right now is a very unique time for me. I was just with a firm for 8 years. Before that, I was a public defender, and then before that, I was in another private firm. But in December, I decided to go out on my own. So started a law firm just in time for a global pandemic. So it's been a very interesting time. Of course, I've got great friends that say, James, we're worried about you. How are you going to get through this? And I kind of take it like I take everything, is you got to look at the positives, because there's a lot of positives being a brand new business that allows me to have the ability to be more nimble than a more established firm, just because I started my firm with mobility in mind. Part of the reason that I decided to be a solo practitioner is I wanted flexibility. I wanted to be able to pop open a laptop and go anywhere I wanted to be able to practice. And with technology, you can have constant contact with clients. They don't really care where you're at so long as you're getting the product done. So I already had that in mind. So starting off from day one, I had cloud computing. I had cloud client management software. Everything is cloud-based. Even my phones are cloud-based. So the transition for me, for purposes of day-to-day, when it comes to prosecuting cases, hasn't been that disrupted. Now, of course, when it comes to cases in court with court proceedings, that's a different ballgame, and that is what it is. I'm not the only one going through it. Everybody on this call is going through it. So we're doing our best to readjust schedules and things like that. But there's a lot, as you all know, there's a lot of things that go into business that have nothing to do with the case themselves. Building your website, building your marketing, doing your quote network, all those kinds of things. So it's been difficult, but I'm a half glass full kind of guy, and I'm going to keep pushing it. And guys like Al, sometimes you'll get down, you'll get a little negative and feel claustrophobic and all that. But I see Al working his butt off, and it's really inspiring for people like me that are trying to build a business from the first brick.
So in terms of the practice there in Northern Virginia, from the criminal standpoint, criminal defense standpoint, how are the courts handling detention hearings? And again, I'm using different terms than what y'all use there, but I know here in Pennsylvania, right now from a criminal standpoint, what we're doing is we're only handling emergent matters,
Yeah.
and we're doing it remotely. Um,
Oh, wow. Okay.
we're doing it remotely in New Jersey, in the counties outside Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not doing anything except moving on the papers, really. They're not doing anything, any type of hearings at all,
Yeah.
except bail hearings, those initial bail hearings. So how is the Virginia area handling things?
So part of the reason I started my firm is I was doing mostly personal injury, and I wanted to get back to what I love is criminal defense. And so as all this stuff started happening, I started building up my criminal practice. But a lot of the cases I'm dealing with now are the non-emergent matters. So assault cases that can be pushed off, DUI cases that can be pushed off. And I'm fortunate not to have anybody incarcerated, but I've always been very involved in the criminal justice reform movement here in Northern Virginia. We've had a bunch of cool elections where there's been awesome results. And I've got a lot of public defender friends that are in there on the front lines dealing with the emergent matters. So when it comes to detention here, we call them bond motions and bail hearings, things like that. Different terms are, they're still going into court and arguing in front of the courts. Some counties are more receptive to get people out because of the concern of COVID within the jail, and sensitive to that, because it's not only a danger to the inmates themselves and the accused people, it's a danger to the personnel too, to the law enforcement officers, to the bailiffs and all that. So most I'm not up to date. In fact, I just had a call with my buddies. We're doing kind of a primer on the COVID and the criminal justice in Northern Virginia later this week. And I was asking them, I haven't heard a lot of receptivity to conference hearings or phone or Zoom hearings. Like it sounds like you guys are doing it. I think
Right.
there's one or two counties kind of starting to open up to that. But most of it's going in, and you got to be in court and you're arguing that, which it's concerning to me, and it's behind the times. I mean, the technologies we can see here is such that it makes a lot of sense. And I think we'll probably get into the discussion later on. It makes a lot of sense that going forward, we start using these technologies. So I think as you see the tangible aspects of this pandemic happening, I have a feeling there's going to be a quick openness to that. And I know some of the judges here in local counties are testing the technologies. They're doing bar community events to test the technology to see if they can transition that in the courtroom. So I'm happy to hear it, but obviously it's slow as the justice system is.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And Larry, obviously, you're in family law. So from your standpoint, what is your firm doing in terms of dealing with COVID, and in terms of what you're all doing in court? How have the court proceedings changed, if they've changed at all? Maybe you can kind of jump in here.
Yeah, thank you. And let me begin by echoing James to thank you for putting this together and to express appreciation for the work you do. You do great stuff, social media stuff and content and information that I know we find valuable, and I'm sure your clients find valuable. What we're doing is a lot of that, a lot of the same thing. We have launched virtual LaMonica Law, and we launched that pretty much, contemporaneously with everything being shut down. And we did that. We were able to do that because we were there, but for the name and actually the as common as it became once the shutdowns came in place. But we're all working remotely. We were prepared to do that from day one. I mean, in fact, we all have. We're all out. We have one person a day, basically, in the office, answering phones, picking up mail, and scanning it out to attorneys. All of the attorneys are out working remotely with full access to our entire database, our server, and everything like that. Greg LaMonica himself is in the office daily as well, just kind of command central from there. But with that, we were already on Slack. And using all those sorts of tools and communications before any of this hit. So once it hit and the shutdown kind of came, we were ahead of it, but basically waiting for it. We left every day leading up to it with the expectation that tomorrow could be the day we're not going back into the office. And every day we were prepared for that. So that part's been kind of seamless, and it's just a real advantage of the planning and the preparation. that Greg and the firm had put together ahead of time. We're starting to see. We just got a thing today from the local bar association that the Delaware County Courthouse has adopted like a Teams, a Microsoft Teams format for conducting some of these hearings. And as I said, we were already up on Slack, so we're used to using that and Zoom and things like that. But I think we'll have no problem jumping into doing some of those things. What James, you were saying, the interesting thing. One of the things we certainly hope will last is that scheduling cases and being more prudent about who needs to be where and when and how much time is going to be put into these things, because as they're being scheduled now, they're being scheduled incrementally. You know what I mean? That the judges are sending out notices that say, your case will be heard at 11 o'clock. So you don't have 25 lawyers showing up at 9 o'clock in the morning and waiting until their case gets heard at 11 or maybe 2 in the afternoon. So that's been one of the things that hopefully is going to stick a little longer.
So now, from what I've seen from the COVID shutdown and what I've liked is it forces courts at least to look in different directions in terms of how to administer justice. So at least in New Jersey, from what I've seen, they've taken a very aggressive approach in the sense that from day one, their staffs were all remote. And right now we're not doing pleas there, but we're at least doing detention hearings. We can file motions to reopen detention. So we can actually do a motions practice there, which is great. And I'm hoping that moving forward, two things happen because of this. One, from a client standpoint, most of my clients now understand that we're probably not going to meet you in the office unless you fall under the exception which the governor has allowed, in which case there's a loved one in jail and there's an immediate need to meet with the attorney for guidance and counsel. And even in those situations, I've told clients that a great alternative, both for your safety and ours, is to do what we're doing right now, is a Zoom call. And I found that clients want to do it this way for a couple reasons. Number one, our office is in downtown Center City. And I don't know about the traffic and media, but I have been in Northern Virginia, and driving in DC traffic is like a whole other thing. I remember I had a conference there, and it was 6:30 a.m. and I said, "Where are people going?" I said, 6:30 in the morning. I said, "Why is there traffic on the highway?" But apparently there is. So from a client standpoint, I'm hoping that clients become more comfortable with consultations via Zoom. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, James, what do you think about that as far as client consultation? Have you tried any client consultations via Zoom or Skype or some technology?
I haven't yet used Zoom for the client consultation. I will say before all this happened, I never really had a whole issue with clients wanting to come in to see me in the first place. I got, I started my own firm. I got this nice office right next to the courthouse, and I realized like it's more for me so I can have a place to go. A lot of times if I need clients to come in for like assault cases where you need to physically see the mechanics behind what's being alleged, that's something that's important. But typically, I find clients don't really care. It's more, are you responding on time? Or are you answering the questions they need? And are you giving attention to them? I've seen, and I've been around attorneys, what they'll do is they'll have this nice fancy presentation with that first meeting, and then they'll never talk to the person again until they're either cutting them a check or in their court, which I think is less comforting for a client, rather than if they send you a message, you can get back to them timely, you answer the questions that they're asking, and then you give them the opportunity. And to be clear, I always say to a client, I always have said to a client, I've got the technology to have a phone call with you, I got the technology to do a Zoom call, and you can come in. What do you prefer? And a lot of times, when you know what you're doing, you're answering questions substantively and not giving them kind of a gray area answer, even when you don't know the answer and you're straight up and say, look, I don't know the answer to that. I find that comfort is probably the most important thing. And exactly, you're right. Nobody wants to drive 30 minutes to wait in your office 10 minutes. And then, you can sit there and have pleasantries, and then they've got to drive back in traffic. I mean, it's not great. For my PI practice, the biggest issue I've had is when I settle cases, typically I like to have the client come in because, you give them this big check, and I'm always worried about that getting lost in the mail. And also, a lot of times it's going to be the last time I see the person. I want to be a chance to shake their hand. And you know, that's the good part of practice, is when you get to have people have money and things like that. I miss that. I kind of like the human interaction, but they don't need it. In fact, I'm starting to learn probably most of them didn't want to come in the first place to get their check. They wanted to just get it sent to them.
Right.
But yeah, I haven't really but I've never really had an issue with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Larry, how about you and your clients? I mean, have you tried technology with them, or, I mean, are you guys considering it, or?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had regular client meetings by Zoom, and we've also had new client consultations by Zoom. I had, just yesterday, I had a woman who told me it was her first Zoom meeting, but she was happy to do it. And we had just the initial consultation. It's just as James said, you kind of answer the questions and give them what they need. A lot of that comes, as you both know, and I'm sure you both do, some of that comes in advance, before you even meet with them, whether it's in person, on the phone, or on a Zoom meeting. You're exchanging some information and documentation with them ahead of time, so you have an idea what their situation is, and then you meet with them. And the Zoom thing has been very good for us, and we do have the comfort of being a fairly easily accessible location. You mentioned that, Alfonso. I was telling James before we came on the air, I lived down in DC for a while, and what you were speaking of, Alfonso, it's called flex time. It's a government invention that makes rush hour last all day long, because it's just all day is rush hour when you're in the DC area. But other than that, no, we're having great success with the technology, with the clients and the interactions, and I'm not seeing any difference. In fact, I'm probably seeing more satisfaction as part of what we're doing here, and I'm sure you guys are doing the same thing. Among the opportunities it's given us is an opportunity to reach out to every client, one by one, with personal touch, email, phone call, even a Zoom call, just how are you doing? What's on your mind? What can we help you with? A lot of them in child custody situations, it's very important to them. What's going on? How are we exchanging custody? And as the person I'm exchanging custody with, also safe and healthy, and practicing good social distancing and all those kind of things. So that these kind of things have been present, and we're working through them in a productive fashion.
And now, and the second part of that goes to, practicing in court. Again, I said this before, as far as remote proceedings, that I think that they're great, especially where, a lot of times, at least in criminal defense, and perhaps Virginia is the same way. And Larry, I know that you were a public defender for a while there, so I mean, you would understand this too. A lot of times we go to court, and it's a status, or nothing's really happening, and it's a procedural formality. And in Philadelphia, we're getting a date, right? We're going to get a date. And it happens in Delaware County too, and it happens everywhere. And sometimes I've actually reached out to attorneys like Larry and his colleagues at Lamonica Law, and say, hey, I'm not in Delaware County today. It's a 5-minute proceeding. Could you swing by courtroom 1 and just grab a date for me? And it's frustrating. So, James, I don't know if you have that in Virginia, but I'm hoping that, and I don't know if it's going to change, because perhaps there's maybe pressure from actually bar associations to maybe protect the legal economy there, that you don't want to make it so easy just to dive in and out of counties. So I could see it not happening, more so because of the fear that it would hurt the legal economy for local lawyers. And again, I'm not against it, but I could see the reason why it wouldn't happen was because one of the reasons why say a county like Chester, which is about 35 miles from Philadelphia, wouldn't want to do it, is because you could have an attorney from Philadelphia knocking out a few status hearings from their office, and really only have to go to court and really go beyond Chester, like Lackawanna, which is like Scranton area. Like 2 hours, you could do it again. So, James, I mean, in terms of technology, do you think the Virginia courts will look at that in terms of trying to reduce, I guess, the just showing up for dates, if you will? What do you think?
I mean, I think from a health standpoint, every court, including Virginia, is going to have to. I can tell you, just as COVID was starting to become a tangible thing, I'm in a circuit court with 50 other people waiting for a status hearing when and the judge is telling me, the Supreme Court of Virginia is getting ready to issue an order, which turned out to be, hey, everything's going to get pushed back for 21 days. The judge knew that order was coming down, and we're sitting in here with 50 people, and one of the attorneys is trying to argue his case for a status hearing when he knows he shouldn't be doing it. And we're all sitting here thinking, what I'm seeing on TV, I'm in danger here, and so is everybody else in this room. So I think what COVID has done, and again, you got to look at the positives, because there's nothing positive about what's happening, but you have to look at the positive because that's life. One of the things that it's doing is it's forcing us to say, okay, we've got this judicial system that has all these inefficiencies, and you're right. Part of the cynicism is inefficiencies in order to protect local practitioners, which I'm totally against. Like, if I'm doing something just to protect my practice, when somebody else could come and do it more valuably, I think that's a harm to the client. It's a harm to the judicial system, because there's a lot of people that are not getting the legal services they need because of the way that we're having these inherent inefficiencies created to protect whatever is being protected, right? And there's different ways to think about it, because let's say you get rid of these inefficiencies, and now one attorney can serve 50 people rather than 20. And because of that, now they're saying, well, let me lower my prices on certain things because now I'm able to serve 20 at a time rather than one. That would end up allowing other attorneys to do more work for people that maybe not have access to the legal system. So I think the courts are going to have to do it. I think it's a good time for them to re-examine their systems, just like the federal government is re-examining how they're creating responses to COVID and these other types of viruses. It's forcing us to look at our systems, our judges to look at our systems, and which is I think that's only a positive thing. You've got technologies like Zoom. There's no reason that we're undervaluing that, and it's really to protect practices. I've always said, if I can't do valuable work for a client, I need to get into a different industry. And look, when self-driving cars come around and my personal injury practice changes, I think that's better for the community, because that means people aren't getting hurt and dying. And it is what it is. Like, my job is not more important than somebody's life. And that's the same thing with what we're talking about here.
I understand. And Larry, what do you think in terms of the practice and remote hearings? And do you think that when all this is over, we're going to see remote hearings just as a normal course of practice and not this exception to it?
I do. I think we're going to see some scheduling changes and some remote practice things. I think that one of the things that is going on in our world are emergency hearings. There, certainly domestic violence hearings and certain emergency hearings, emergency custody hearings are going on. And what the benefit here, again, James, I agree with you. You have to look on the plus side. And one of the benefits here is that it's making the courts and the judges and the practitioners look at what really is an emergency that warrants being heard on this kind of a basis. Whereas, 3 months ago, people would file emergency petitions at the drop of a hat over things that clearly were not an emergency. And what they're doing is chewing up resources and time and everything else simply by doing that for whatever reason. And it's made practitioners look at it, and it's certainly made courts and judges look at it and say, what do we really need to do on an emergency basis and what's not an emergency? And I think that will last. And I think that some of the remote hearings, as I said, I've had a couple of I haven't had one of the Teams meetings yet, but I've had a couple of conferences, phone conferences with judges and things like that. And, there are things moving. Again, some of it is just getting a date and, setting some pretrial ground rule kind of things that I think there's no reason that shouldn't continue. And if it helps, James, what you're talking about, if it helps make the practices more efficient and the net result of that is providing more and better legal services to more people who couldn't otherwise afford it, that's all to the good. These are the qualities that come out of this terrible situation.
Well, I think James brought up a good point about, I brought up protecting the local legal economy, and I'm sure, and again, I don't want to assume, but I'm sure that local courts are doing things a certain way just to do that, protect the economy. Because I've been in areas, Delaware County included, Larry, that they have certain forms to file, for instance, to waive an arraignment. They're not available online. And why not? Because you actually have to physically go to the courthouse, to a specific room in that courthouse, and get those forms, fill them out. And actually, they've actually relaxed it a little bit. When I first started practicing, you actually had to type the forms with a typewriter. And if you attempted to print them in your own handwriting or have your assistant print them, because my handwriting's awful, they would kick them back to you and say it has to be typed. And they knew full and well that, people aren't going to have typewriters available, and it was all done. Now, I think that they've relaxed, Larry, right? The typing rule. That's
I go back to the days when those forms had to be typed. Yes, I remember it well. Take it back to the office and get a typewriter.
So, James, let me ask you, because I don't practice, obviously, in that area. Is there anything in Northern Virginia, in the course that you practice in right now, that should be available online that's not, for instance, that a local practitioner would easily have access to? But let's say you were in, I don't know, what's a town like, if I was in Virginia Beach, I don't know, Virginia Beach, that's a couple hours from Fairfax, yes? A couple hours?
Yeah, Virginia Beach, depending on traffic, it's anywhere from 3 to 8.
So if I was practicing
that's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And those forms, are there any forms in your local court? Because I know in Philadelphia, pretty much everything's, Philadelphia, it's everything's available online. You could file everything electronically, but in smaller counties, it's not that way. So in Virginia, had they really? Is the court system, is it electronic filing?
It's not, no. And I think that probably is the number one, is we need to get electronic filing. And some courts are electronic, some aren't. At least, and I'm talking about state. Now, federal is electronic.
Yes.
And I haven't been down to Virginia Beach for a criminal case in probably 9 years or more.
Where you practice.
It's not so much that they require form, because I think the courts for the most part are good at putting forms online, or you can draft up your own type of motion or whatever. I think it's more some jurisdictions will require extra status hearings, like where a DUI should be one court date, it stretches out to 2 or 3, or they'll have a status hearing to schedule a trial docket where you've got to be in the room and things like that. And I don't know necessarily those are and again, this is me kind of thinking of it as least cynically as possible. I don't know that it's intentionally to protect practitioners in local practices. I think it's more that's just the way it's always been done. There's a county in Northern Virginia where for circuit court filing, they literally have a book that they write in. And it's a huge book, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking, whatever happens to that book? What do we do? And it's just these old, outdated systems that don't make a whole lot of sense. That again, I don't think it's really just the way it's always been done. And I get it. Look, I'm still in my personal injury cases sending out faxes. That's insane. And fortunately, now you have e-faxing, so it's almost like an email, but. It's just this sticking to these technologies that are kind of outdated. And look, there are other situations where I've seen local groups trying to protect the local practice, which I don't go beyond. It is what it is, and I'm all against that. But I think it's really just outdated and not really familiar with the technologies that are out there, and just the natural resistance to learning new technologies and changing things.
Now, Larry, in terms of Delaware County, I know we can't file criminal motions electronically in Delaware County. I can do it in Chester, Montgomery, Bucks, and obviously Philadelphia. Can't file yet criminal matters in Delaware County. Now, family law, can you file electronically there? Or is it still paper filing?
No, it's still paper filing. We can file by mail, and we can file. There's a drop off outside the courthouse, and that's what's going on right now. Is we're filing by mail, or by physically drop off at a drop box. But no, the filing's not electronic yet.
Okay. All right. So now I just want to kind of wrap it up here. But so in terms of what you're all doing now, I know that our firm. When this thing kicked off, I immediately, what I did was I wanted to upgrade our website, and I really tried to set it up so it became more accessible to people. We have the ability now to text through our website. I also put out our e-business card, which is a great service. If you all haven't looked at that, there's a company out there making e-business cards where you can when you shoot out a link now, you can share that link with your clients, and they can just immediately download all their information on their smartphone, and it gives them access to everything. It's great. So those are two minor things that we did in terms of where we directed. And as you all know, we put out a lot of content continuously. I mean, I'm a big fan of putting out content, educating my clients and prospective clients. So from my standpoint, what we try to focus on in the next 3, 4, hopefully not too much longer, 3 or 4 weeks, is putting content out based on things that we believe are important to people. So if you all had to kind of sum it up in terms of what particular legal issue or issues that you all, if you're putting out content in the next couple of weeks, or if you have put out content, what you're really focusing on. James, why don't you start off?
Yeah, so as I said, I started my law firm brand new. So within the last month, I literally just built my website, or I had somebody build it for me. But the first few months of practice, I was so busy with just the mechanics of answering client calls, making sure the cases were transitioned over to my new firm and all those kinds of things. I didn't really have an opportunity to really focus, because I'm a big fan of content marketing, just like you, Alfonso. I mean, I tend to find that clients are happy when I have they have questions for me, and then I say, hey, by the way, I've written a bunch of this on my website. Just go here and you're going to have all your questions answered, because that way they can do it in the context of their own home. They can rewatch or reread, and then when they come to me as an educated consumer, they have more specific questions to ask, which makes them a better client, because then I can help them make better legal decisions about their case. So what I'm trying to do right now is really hone in on building the website that I want, and not obviously it has to look pretty, and I think mine looks nice. It's got my beautiful face on it.
Right, yeah.
But it's really, my goal is to constantly be writing articles. I've probably written 35 to 40 articles over the last 2 months, and in the last week I've probably written just 15 this week. And so my goal has really been to push out that, and it's really to have that portfolio of information for the clients. Anybody else looking, and I even say on there, look, you don't have to hire me. If this helps you talk to another attorney, or you have a current attorney and they're not really answering, well, now you have a question to ask them. I see that as value to somebody, so I'm happy about that. On the back end, also, what I'm doing is, I've got a great customer relations management software. It's called Lawmatics. I invest in this thing. It really links up with my practice management software. I use Practice Panther, which is a great technology. I suggest anybody that is looking for technology, that's great. And then Lawmatics. But Al, I know you have an e-newsletter and automated responses. It's it's a complicated thing. And essentially you got to learn how to code almost. But I'm now setting that up to where when somebody calls and then I have I call it a hot lead, I just click a button. Now they've got the new client forms, medical authorization, and then my client package. And then if you don't sign it and fill it out, it'll send reminders, which has been awesome. And I'm taking time to automate that side of the practice to when I know that at some point I'm gonna get a stream of calls. I no longer have to be doing that individually. And then I'm setting up my newsletter. It allows it through that system too. So, it's a brand new business. These are things that, regardless of COVID or not, I had to do anyway. But now instead of doing that commute in the office, I'm just waking up at 5 or 6 in the morning and knocking that out and then getting to the day. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit slower. I get that too. I mean, that's because a lot of people have a lot of things going on, including myself. You got family you're worrying about, things like that. But that's what I'm doing. So.
And Larry, how about your firm? I mean, what are you all doing in terms of your content focus? Are you putting out anything COVID focused, or trying to target a certain issue that you think clients are going to want to know about more these days?
Yeah, among the general stuff is that, admire both of what you guys are doing and see your work and admire what you're doing. And again, I think we do a lot of the same thing. That we have have for a long time had links to. Greg has 2 full-length books that link right on our website. That again, what you're talking about, James, that that's been the model that that Greg sent for us for a long time. Is put the content out there. You know what I mean, and you give them something that they're going to use, and maybe they'll use it with us, and maybe they'll use it somewhere else. But it's really what people are looking for when they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, oh my God, what's going to happen to my child, my house, my future, my fortune. And those are the things that my little baby in the firm is the forensic support team, and that's just trying to load up on some of that now too to everybody, and that's a client or any potential clients too, in terms of guess what, all the valuations are different than they were not so long ago. All the valuations need to be looked at, and settlement terms are changing. Just that the settlement prospects are changing as we do this. So a lot of that is what we're putting out there now to talk about. What are the prospects now, and how are they different than they used to be? If you were going into your divorce, last fall or sometime like that, and we worked up a view of your marital estate and started working on settlement prospects. Guess what? That's all different now, So those are the kinds of things we're focused on. And again, as always, the things that do wake people up at 3 a.m. are the children, and the custody and what's happening, and those are the things that we're really focused on. That try to answer your questions and help provide what resources we can to help those that are dealing with what a lot of people are dealing with, staying home, working from home with the children, doing homeschooling and the kids, and all those things that are, how can we help you? What can we do for you?
So guys, I just want to thank you all for coming on today. I just want to take just a minute to tell people where they can find you. James, why don't you just, if you could, just give people your website and your phone number, and where they can find you just on the internet, obviously.
Yeah, and Al, thanks again for putting this together. This is really great what you're doing. So my website is abreniolaw.com. I keep it simple. Phone number is 703-570-4180. So look, if you got a question, give me a call. If you just need to complain, give me a call. So.
And Larry, why don't you just give everyone your contact information and where they can find you?
Sure, and that's again simple as well. LaMonica Law, LaMonaca Law, LaMonicaLaw.com. Website again loaded with content there and all the contact information. We are in Media, Pennsylvania, which is, as you said, Al, it's outside of Philadelphia, western suburbs, serving that area, the main line all throughout there. The phone number is 610-892-3877, and you're still going to get a person when you call in. During business hours anyway, and you'll certainly get a response during any hours. And again, that's something that we work like you do, Al. Kind of around the clock with responses to people that are looking for it. So that's where we are.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, I want to thank you both. Again, my name is Alfonso Gambone. You can reach me at gambonelaw.com. Our phone number 215-755-9000. We answer our calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you'd like to email me directly, alfonso@gambonelaw.com. I want to thank James and Larry for coming on today, and I hope you all are getting through this COVID shutdown as best as possible and healthy, and we will talk to you all soon. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, James.